organized forces in the service of His Majesty the King, the oldest is the Royal Navy. Some call it the silent service. This way up till rising early in the morning. And not only can they sing, they can dance. One of the traditional dances of the Navy is the hornpipe. But dancing is one of the milder forms of recreation. Look at this nifty footwork. When two hefty stokers get going, there's no excuse my glove about it. When you think of the Navy, you must think of Jim Blake. For Blake and the Navy are inseparable. There's a member of the Blake family in practically every kind of ship. And if we're not mistaken, here's Petty Officer Jim himself coming ashore for a spot of leave. The first thing Jim does is to quench his thirst. Some of you may know the old terrace pub near the floating bridge in Old Portsmouth. It's here that sailormen come to lay the dust in their great big throats. Jim must have run into a dust storm. In congenial company and reminiscent mood, he often recalls his early days in the service of the Royal Naval Barracks, Pompey, where today ratings move across the parade ground at the double. Then, as now, the anchor chart is just one of those regular things. It's part of the training routine, and a very important part, as the men seem to understand. Apart from the several different kinds of anchor, sheets, bower, streams, heads, and so on, there's the tricky business of coming to, laying out, letting go, mooring, weighing, and many other things you'd never think could possibly be concerned with a simple iron grapple. It's a surprise to learn, for instance, that it's the ship's blacksmith who actually lets the anchors go. There was a time when the PT class just bent and stretched its arms and legs and threw out its chest. But now it's blossomed into the physical and recreational training class with hockey practice as one of the items. Many a smart body of men has been turned out by the type of squad drill used at Pompey. Perhaps the smartness is mainly due to the type of men who join the Navy. They're keen and receptive. But whatever it is, the proof of the training is in the marching and the arms drill. The men who go down to the sea in ships go as one man. That's the sort of precision you get when the recruits are quick and intelligent. The kind of sailormen who are proud of the service and have a real liking for the sea. Off they go, worthy specimens of the men who serve in His Majesty's ships. Today they are to be inspected by the Commodore. It's one of those occasions when the whole of the personnel at the barracks is on its toes to make a good turnout. The Commodore pauses now and again to chat with a man. And these close-up pictures will show the fine types of men they are. The inspection over, the men march past, and they make an impressive picture as they swing into formation across the big barrack square, with the Commodore taking the salute. Smartly bringing up the rear is a company of Reds. Shades of note. There were no wrens to brighten the seascape when Victory was a battleship. She is the best-known example of the famous old wooden wall. Laid down in 1759, she had been afloat 40 years before she took part in the Battle of Trafalgar. All officers and men of the Royal Naval Barracks, Portsmouth, are born on or entered in the books of Victory. The rig in those days ran to a straw hat, a pigtail, and a striped jersey. The Nelson boys were a little gay. Jim saw his first sea service in a destroyer, or, if you prefer it, torpedo boat destroyer. The modern destroyer is a sort of maid-of-all-work of the fleet. She not only goes into action with torpedo attacks on the enemy, but forms an anti-submarine screen and generally plays Old Harry between the lines of the heavier ships. Polishing the brass on board is a much slower business than polishing off the brass ashore, but it's one of the things that have to be done to keep the ship clean. The destroyer will soon be on her way again, and she's getting all dolled up before she goes. The destroyer is armed with guns and torpedoes, torpedo attack being her main purpose. The quick handling and training of the torpedo tube is very important. The ship is built for speed, and the ship's company know how to jump to it. The torpedoes themselves are constantly overhauled and their propellers oiled. These are the gun directors, which, as their name implies, direct the guns and automatically work in conjunction with them. The captain of a destroyer, especially in wartime, must be a very resourceful officer. He commands the most important of the small ships. The signalman is busy sending messages to and receiving them from other ships. Communication is constant. Serving out the rum ration is one of those time-honored customs that are as old as the Navy itself. To 1 part of rum are added 2 parts of water. So, rum becomes draft. And here comes the mailboat, always a welcome visitor. This morning she's a sort of bottle ship, laden with stores thirsty souls for the use of. No. But the letters are there too, and the postman nips up the letter as if he's bursting with good news. The wardroom, anyway, seems to be in a state of expectancy. The first lieutenant comes in with the mail, and it looks as if somebody is a little impatient to get at it. Sea hobbies, like sea horses, take odd form. A sub-lieutenant turns his cabin into a studio, while a stoker is bent on turning matches into a model ship. It's a marvel of ingenuity, made with hundreds of matches, 1 penknife, 1 pair of hands, and 1 bottle of glue. A favorite game in the Navy is tombola, known in the Army, and, of course, the most exclusive club as housey. It's the only form of gambling allowed, and it's played, you jolly well know how it's played. Buy a card, mark it, if you have the numbers, if you have, you're paid. The ship's cat prefers mousy, and she doesn't object to small stakes. The destroyer is on the move. There are some who say that life in a destroyer is life at its best. For a time, Jim served with the cruiser, and his duties and the ship were rather different. The cruiser has really 2 main duties in wartime. One is to act as advance guard to the fleet at sea, and the other to patrol the trade routes and protect shipping. Although Jim was only an able seaman, he was always a rather particular sort of chap, particular about his appearance, I mean. Even when there was dirty work to be done, he liked to have plenty of water with him. He wanted to come clean. Oh, yes, he was very fussy. Ah, that's better. He's feeling quite respectable now. Then came a period of duty in a battleship, the most powerful unit of the fleet. Originally, battleships were known as line of battleships. They were the vessels that took their place in the line in action. The line is the ultimate maximum of strength. It must contain the most formidable ships capable of giving and receiving punishment by the heaviest weapons. The strength, armor, and armament of a battleship are vital factors that might make all the difference between victory and defeat. Looking at the mighty strength of a modern man of war, it's remarkable to think that the first armor-plated British battleship was laid down less than 100 years ago. Like most sailormen, Jim was always fond of a yarn, and he could always tell one. Those eloquent hands of his will help you to guess the sort of yarn he's telling now. Jim served in the biggest and the smallest, like this torpedo boat, the type of mosquito craft that was evolved during the First Great War. Then they were speedboats, about 60 foot long and driven by powerful petrol engines. They usually carried one torpedo and relied entirely upon their high speed to launch their attacks and get away. Larger and faster MTBs have been put into service, and today this mosquito craft, very swift and with great maneuverability, has a most deadly sting. It's small enough to have big ideas. Came the day when Jim was transferred to a carrier as a petty officer in a fore and aft rig. When he reported for duty in that exalted rank, he felt as if he were taking over the ship, and it wasn't long before he had to show his authority, and in a big way. It might have been an accident, of course, but it was more likely darn carelessness. As a matter of fact, it was, well, you should have heard what that new petty officer called it. Exactly. The aircraft carrier has put to sea for practice by naval pilots in taking off and landing on the flight deck. A seafire has been brought up from the hangar and is stretching her wings for a takeoff. There she goes. Streaking over the long deck, the plane heads out to sea to take a wide turn before coming back to the ship to land. Another machine makes an even neater takeoff. It's a busy day for the captain and the ship. The Seafire has completed her turn after the takeoff, and guided by the batsman, is coming in to land. When she touches down, she's pulled up by an arrestor wire, which engages in the hook under her tail. Each machine is carefully examined before and after taking the air. The arrestor wire is allowed to run out from each side of the ship as the hook catches in it. When the wire reaches its limit, the plane is brought to rest. A crash barrier stops the machine if it should miss the arrestor wire. Her trials over, the Seapower folds her wings and returns to the hangar. Going down. The carrier pigeon goes home to roost. He has put up a grand show. HMS Ganges is the name of the naval establishment at Trotley, where Jim's elder son George was trained. Seaman boys, as they're called, come to Trotley between the ages of 15 and a quarter and 16, and after about a year are drafted to ships of the fleet as boys first class. The seaman boys of Ganges are parading for prayers and the ceremony of hoisting the colors, and they turn out very smartly. Most of them, like Jim's boy, are sons of serving men and members of families that have been represented in the Navy for many generations. These boys have been brought up on naval tradition, so to speak, and in joining the service, they are following what amounts to a natural instinct. They are keen and very energetic. The parade masses near the rostrum, the front ranks marking time, while the rear ranks close up. The white ensign is hoisted while buglers sound the salute. The boys are very fond of ceremonial and do it well. The commanding officer salutes the colors. The boys obey the order, "Off cap." The parade over comes the order, "On cap," and on they go in a flash.